Support for Colorado Today comes from Credit Union of Colorado. With access to over 30,000 ATMs and a mobile app, they're dedicated to offering the services of a big bank with a heart. Learn more at honestlygood.org.
Support for Colorado Today comes from Safeway. Their pharmacists are here to help, offering a wide range of vaccines including flu, COVID, pneumonia, and RSV immunizations. Visit your local Safeway or schedule online at safeway.com/pharmacy.
The Rockies finished up their season yesterday in San Francisco, and I was there for it. Not the best year for them, to be honest, but hopefully you have a much more successful week ahead. I'm Arlo Perez Esquivel.
And I'm Bazi Kanani. Coming up, the story of the second student wounded at Evergreen High School. He's 14 years old, and his family says he confronted the shooter.
Then, what a federal government shutdown would mean for you in Colorado.
Passports will get processed, VA will have medical appointments, but again, less staff, build in more time.
Plus, RTD may make it harder to access a service that people with disabilities have come to rely on.
The best part of this whole story is RTD cracked the code. They found the silver bullet.
Why they're considering changing it with a vote tomorrow.
And in Colorado Wonders, what could possibly be the explanation for an airport to be named Happy Butt?
She was 100 years old, and I think actually she thought it was kind of funny anyway.
It's Monday, September 29th. Here's the news in Colorado today. If you've been following the aftermath of the Evergreen High School shooting closely, you've noticed that we haven't heard a lot about one of the students who was injured. That's because his family has remained totally private. That is, until recently, when they put out their first public statement. They did not share their names, but they said the boy is 14 years old and he's had several surgeries. They said on the day of the shooting, he and a friend confronted the gunman, and he helped other people get out of harm's way. The statement says, quote, "In those terrifying moments, our son showed a level of bravery, strength, and will to survive that no child should ever be asked to display." It goes on to thank a list of people without naming them. A librarian who pointed the boys to safety, an EMT firefighter who gave him first aid at a recreation center behind the school, first responders and hospital staff who triaged his injuries, a flight team who brought the boy to an intensive care unit, and all the others who, quote, "dedicate their lives to helping children and families in their darkest days." The statement says the boy is able to communicate and is asking about the health of his classmates and friends and others who were in the school. He has also asked, according to his family, that adults take, quote, "real, meaningful action so that no child or family endures this kind of horror." The family of the 14-year-old has chosen not to ask for donations. They're instead directing people to support Matthew Silverstone's recovery. That is the 18-year-old who was also critically injured at Evergreen.
There's no agreement yet in Washington to continue funding the federal government. So, starting Wednesday, we could be back in a shutdown. CPR's Washington, D.C. reporter Caitlin Kim joins us to explain what that could mean for you and what role Colorado's leaders are playing in this standoff. Caitlin, what can we expect will shut down? Will people get their Social Security checks? Will national parks close?
Yes, so Social Security checks will continue to go out. So just as a reminder, when we talk about a government shutdown, one, it involves discretionary spending. That's what Congress actually appropriates every year, not mandatory spending, which is what Social Security, Medicaid, Medicare fall under. And two, typically any service deemed essential, like defense, air traffic control, will remain open. The federal employees working won't get paid until the shutdown is over. But yes, planes will be flying, but there might be less staff, so check to make sure your flight will be on time. Passports will get processed. VA will have medical appointments, but again, less staff, build in more time. The last time the government shut down, which was during the first Trump administration, he kept national parks open, but, again, little staff, and there was actually a lot of garbage buildup, dirty bathrooms, and damage done to the parks. Now, Governor Polis says he hopes the government will keep national parks like Rocky Mountain National Park open, and that if needed, the state could shoulder some of that cost.
This time around, President Trump has threatened mass layoffs of federal workers if the shutdown happens. How many Coloradans are at risk there?
So as of July, there were over 40,000 federal workers here. The memo says anyone who's not working around Trump's priorities could be fired. Now, this would build on all the other federal workers and people with federal contracts who've already been laid off around Colorado. Now, many Democrats view this as a threat, a way to make this painful and force them to cave and vote for a short-term government funding bill. But even those who have concerns that Trump will go through with this threat, they argue that Trump has already gone around Congress when it comes to federal spending and Congress's power of the purse, as well as firing and reducing the federal workforce. They think Trump could do mass firings now or later on in the year. There's nothing stopping him or his budget director, Russ Vought, who wants a much smaller federal government.
Most people are aware that right now Republicans control the White House, the Senate, and the House. So they may ask, why are we once again on the verge of a government shutdown?
Because for this type of legislation, you need 60 votes to pass in the Senate. And there are only 53 Republicans in the Senate. So Republicans there need Democratic votes.
What are Democrats asking for? And is there anything Colorado's Democratic senators want that could get their votes?
So Senators Michael Bennet and John Hickenlooper have been consistent that they won't support the Republican plan. The two main things they and congressional Democrats in general are asking for are both related to health care. The first is they want to see Medicaid cuts that Republicans passed in the One Big Beautiful Bill reversed. Now, Bozzy, that's very unlikely to happen. This is the GOP's signature bill. The other issue is getting an extension of a tax credit that helps people buy health insurance on their marketplace, which is known here as Connect for Health Colorado. Now, if that doesn't happen, Coloradans who buy health insurance on the marketplace are going to see their premiums skyrocket, double, in some cases triple in cost. Now, people start getting their bills on November 1st and have to make decisions based on those higher costs. Last year, over 280,000 Coloradans bought insurance on the exchange for this year, so this is not an insignificant number.
Any idea how long a shutdown could last?
Well, Bozzy, your guess is as good as mine. We might still avoid a shutdown. Trump is meeting with congressional leaders this afternoon after canceling a meeting with Democratic leaders last week, so there may be an off-ramp. But I can tell you that during Trump's first administration, we had the longest government shutdown, about 35 days. Now, unlike last time, if it happens, it will not be over a holiday, so people will feel it faster with regards to government services.
CPR Washington reporter Caitlin Kim. Thanks, Caitlin.
Thank you, Bozzy.
People with disabilities say a public transit service in Metro Denver called Access on Demand has transformed their lives. So, why is the RTD Board of Directors considering changing the service? They're expected to make a decision tomorrow night. CPR's Stephanie Wolf is here to explain more. Stephanie, what do people like about Access on Demand?
Well, for many, it's really filled a gap since it debuted in 2020. Local transit agencies that get federal funds, they must offer paratransit services for people with disabilities who can't use a bus or a train on a fixed route.
And here in the greater Denver area, that's those accessoride vans that we've seen on the roads.
Exactly. But there are a lot of rules to using that service. Like you can only get picked up or dropped off within a certain distance of bus and rail lines. You also have to book at least a day in advance. Now enter Access on Demand. It subsidizes the cost of rides with certain rideshare and taxi companies. I've spoken with many people who use this service, and they all say the same thing, that it's been a game changer.
I'm Mary Hennick. I'm the parent and legal guardian of a 25-year-old with intellectual and physical disabilities. Once Access on Demand became available, he was able to get employed by an organization that was not right on the route, but he could get directly curb-to-curb service from where he lived to his employer. And that made a world of difference for him.
So how is RTD proposing to change this service?
Well, right now, users don't pay anything as long as their rideshare or taxi trip is less than $25. RTD staff are recommending the standard base fare be raised to $6.50. Those who qualify for RTD's income-based discount program would pay less. They're also proposing reducing the amount that RTD chips in for each ride from that $25 to $20, and these changes would kick in January.
So the service would become more expensive for many people. Why are RTD staff recommending this?
So RTD did not grant me an interview for this story, but from past reporting by CPR, this appears to be about money. RTD says the program is really popular and its costs have ballooned since they launched it. They're worried about the long-term budget implications from that. RTD has been in financial trouble for a while now, and this is happening in other cities around the country that have similar on-demand paratransit services. They've had to really think about how to make sure that these services are financially sustainable. At RTD, staff project that their proposed changes would reduce the cost of the service by about a third, which is nearly $6 million in savings.
What are you expecting to see at the RTD meeting tomorrow?
The disability organizers I've spoken with, they're really upset. So I do expect people to turn up tomorrow to have their voices be heard, just as they did last time this was up for discussion in July.
Don't take away our freedoms and our rights just because we can't drive. Thank you.
That's Chelsea Cook, an Access On Demand user, speaking to the board directors during that July meeting. Many also take issue with the way RTD has labeled Access On Demand, calling it a, quote, supplemental premium service. This is Richard Bamber with the transit advocacy group, Greater Denver Transit.
They're saying AOD is not really something we really need to provide. You should consider yourself almost lucky that we're doing this, and therefore you shouldn't rely, and you have almost come to feel, to be fortunate. And we're saying that is wrong.
What people I spoke with really want is for RTD to do a comprehensive impact study on all of its paratransit offerings, including Access-a-Ride, which I mentioned earlier does have a number of limitations. They also point to a ballot measure that voters approved last year. It allows RTD to keep all of its extra tax revenue rather than give it back to taxpayers through Colorado's Taxpayer Bill of Rights. And voters were told part of that revenue would go toward maintaining services for people with disabilities. Here's Claudia Folska. She's blind and she uses RTD, including Access On Demand. She's also a former board director.
Access On Demand is doing something that works. And that's the great news here. The best part of this whole story is RTD cracked the code. How do we provide the best transit possible to the people who need it the most?
And the thing is, accessible transit is key for the independence of people with disabilities.
CPR's Stephanie Wolf. Thanks for continuing to follow this, Steph.
You're welcome.
We thought that it was a misspelling, a misprint, when we saw it on the map, an hour east of Denver. But it's real. Happy Butt Airport. CPR's Ryan Warner really wanted to find out how the name of this airstrip came to be. So he's here for Colorado Wonders, where we indulge curiosities about our state. Ryan, I know for a fact that you spend your free time looking at aeronautical maps.
This is true. In fact, there is an aeronautical map behind my desk.
True, I've seen it.
At work, yeah.
Okay, so you called up the airport's owner and he picked up the phone.
Yup. He was on his way back from buying a tractor part. Robert Husted is a farmer and a pilot. This is in Byers, Colorado.
Well, my mom's name was Gladys. And of course, being we were a bunch of smart-ass kids, when she wasn't around, we called her Happy Butt.
Gladys is another way to say happy, but that's the joke. I don't have Gladyses in my life, so this was news to me.
She died in 2013, and she was 100 years old. And I think actually she thought it was kind of funny anyway. I don't think there's anybody named Gladys that doesn't understand the nickname.
Love that. Okay, so his mom had this nickname.
Yeah, and Robert inherited some money from her when Gladys died. And he bought an airplane, and named it after her. But he didn't have the money to move into one of these fly-in communities. So these are developments where you can park your plane in a hangar next to your house.
Wow.
I know, fancy. Instead, he bought land near Byers, went through an extensive process to get permission to build an airstrip.
When I got talking to the FAA about, what we were going to name the airport and stuff, I said, well, the airplane's happy, but the airport ought to be the same, and they agreed.
It's private, but indeed it's on the charts. In case someone's in trouble, they can land there. And when people do land there, he gives them a sticker. It has a picture of a corgi's butt on it.
Yeah, they're pretty famous for their butt.
And this sticker says, I touched down at Happy Butt.
I want to learn how to fly a plane just to get one of these stickers. Ryan, I'll be honest, this is one of the weirdest stories that we've ever covered.
Oh, thank
and
you.
We covered a UFO watchtower, so it's saying something. Thank you for this piece of Colorado trivia.
You're welcome, Captain.
Additional reporting for today's show came from CPR's Rachel Estabrook. Follow Colorado Today in your podcast app. I'm Arlo Perez Esquivel.
And I'm Bazi Kanani. This is CPR News.
Support for Colorado Today comes from Credit Union of Colorado. With access to over 30,000 ATMs and a mobile app, they're dedicated to offering the services of a big bank with a heart. Learn more at honestlygood.org.
Support for Colorado Today comes from Safeway. Their pharmacists are here to help, offering a wide range of vaccines including flu, COVID, pneumonia, and RSV immunizations. Visit your local Safeway or schedule online at safeway.com/pharmacy.